Yeah, good morning everyone. Dobro utro, or dober den. Yeah, I'm Kирстен Hakenbroch. I work for the Gьоте-институт in Sofia, but I used to be a lecturer in urban studies and environmental social sciences, and in that capacity I also used to study in this area that I'm going to talk about, and I also led a couple of excursions. Well, I hope you all had a wonderful evening yesterday at the Yantra River, and I'd today like to take you to another river, to the Emshер in Germany's Rurgebиет. It's a river that's kind of just been reawakening, as it had a very dark and stinky past. And I want to give you first a bit of a context of the history of why are we talking about this river. Then in my second part, I'll be kind of looking at renaturalization and what it actually means. And third, I will talk about the cultural re-engagement and what it actually invites. Am I audible everywhere? Okay, cool. So, to give you context, where are we? We're in the yellow thingy, Midwestern Germany in the Rurgebиет, which is the largest agglomeration area in Germany and kind of, since more than 150 years, the industrial heart of the city. A short quiz, what it is known for. If you agree, raise your hand. Is it known for coal? Is it known for beer? Less so. And steel? So, to give you the correct answers, everything's correct. But here we're talking mostly about industries in terms of coal and steel, but yes, the beer. The Rurgebиет got its name from the Ruhr River, which is the southern river in which you can see. There was a pointer somewhere. Did you have a pointer like this? Like, it didn't work. Okay, I saw it.
I'm sorry about the pointer.
No worries, I can do without.
Okay.
Super. Right. So yeah, this is the Ruhr area. Before industrialization, when it was rather a rural area with like small towns, villages, and rivers. Yeah. Right. So this is the Ruhr. And over here is the Emshер, so that's the two rivers of the region. So the starting point for the industrialization of the whole area was coal that was found in the south and was very high, so you could actually just dig in your courtyard or your garden. But then it moved north, where the coal is like 1,000 meters deep, so it became like really, really heavy industry. So in comparison here, you see more or less today. And you can see that, well, the space of the factories, but then also the space of railway networks, and the cities were continuously growing. And there was also a need for housing, of course, for the workers, but like the whole area was thriving, so that's kind of the urban development that happened over 150 years. In the 1960s, that was the peak of urban development in terms of the urban and also the industrial development. And then let's briefly look at the rivers. So here, 1840, the Ruhr River and the Emshер River. And then there was a high impact on the rivers because the growing settlement volume kind of, meant that the rivers were being aligned to avoid flooding, to allow for settlements, and to allow for the extensive mining. So here you can see the two rivers, on the top the Emshir, which we're talking about more, and on below the Ruhr, and how they completely changed their appearances. But this went even further. So here, or one of the very particular developments of this area was the human taming of a river, the Emshir. So this shows you the Emshir around 1900, when it was an untamed river in a sparsely populated landscape, in a swampy kind of landscape. But it increasingly was a health risk because all the wastewater went uncleared into the river, it kept flooding settlements, so it was a question of hygiene, diseases kept spreading. So what was the idea? The coal mining extended to the north, and it was necessary to kind of take care of this pollution. So due to the coal mining, it was not possible to actually put underground sewage. So in 1899, the Regional Water and Sewage Association, the Emshir Genossenschaft, was founded kind of out of this necessity. And it gradually, here you can see one of the construction sites in the 50s, it gradually converted the river into an open sewage canal. And that is, we're speaking of 70 kilometers of river plus 20 kilometers or so of tributary rivers. So overall, 19 kilometers of river were transformed into open sewage. And you can see this also here. And this, I studied here in the end of 90s, 2000s, and was still a sewage canal and very stinky. So, yeah, what then? How to make a river come back after humans have totally destroyed it? So the rapid industrial development I talked about was not unlimited. So from the 1960s, actually the industrial boom ended. Many of the coal and steel plants actually closed down. There was a lot of unemployment. So there was a deep need for structural and social transformation in the whole Ruhr area. And this kind of structural change actually made way for, or required also, a redesigning of both the economic base of the area and the landscape which mankind had destroyed. So just to illustrate to you again, this is the way the Emshir system was managed, very heavily, a lot of pumping stations, a lot of sewage plants, because of this mining subsidence, kind of the ground not being suitable for putting pipes. But once the industry had left the area, one of the reasons that renaturation of the river became possible was the end of coal mining, because there was no longer the subsidence, and that actually meant technically now you could put sewage canals underground. So technically renaturation was possible. Secondly, in Europe, so another reason for renaturization was a European legislation, the European Water Framework Directive. And the Emshir, as you can see here, this very dark violet line is the river Emshir, was one of the worst polluted rivers all over Europe. No surprise, it was a sewage canal. So it also meant politically renaturation was required. So the idea was to bring back the Emshir as a nature-oriented waterway, offering high ecological value and a multifaceted recreational activity in the region. So step by step, the plan was to, or the plan is, or continues to be, to reconstruct this huge system, bring it underground, and then look at the river overground. So here's how it's supposed to look like, it's kind of the idea, or what also already happens, as you can see in the picture, the smaller one below. So the surface is kind of being remodeled into a river, so the natural water will stay in a new riverbed, create new river banks, and there's a lot of landscape architecture, of course, around it. The whole project, to give you kind of the truth, cost 5.5 billion euros in 30 years, probably more. And there's a lot of challenges in this context as well, because there's a high number of political actors, a lot of municipalities, a lot of administrative units in a very polycentric region. So you can imagine 90 kilometers of rivers means a lot of management. There's a very demanding infrastructural situation, because still it's a highly managed system. And then there's a big question around what is actually our understanding of nature in a region where 10 million people also live. So this is just a brief look at the concept, the Emshel Landscape Park master plan. So the idea is to have 320 square kilometers in the region that should be kept free from every new development in the future, and should be transformed to a large park between cities and inside cities. And again, you can see this here is the Emshel. So this kind of green belt is being developed along the river Emshel. And what you see in red is actually a network of cycle paths that is very key to making the Emshel also, once again, of more recreational value. So let's look at the third part, how to reconnect cities, people with a river that they've lost culturally. So this is about transformation and culture, and you have to really imagine that communities have been very, very long, like 100 years, disconnected, not only from the river, but maybe more general, also from nature. So around the river Emshel, there's many disadvantaged neighborhoods, there's many derelict neighborhoods, and you can imagine if you have the coal mine just in your garden and the Emshel behind it, it's also very smelly, very bad air quality, etc. So I want to point out a few projects. I'll just bring them in here. I want to point out a few projects that bring people back to the new river in one way or another, socially, economically, ecologically. First of all, there's the project Emshel Kunstweg, so it translates into Emshel Art Path, and it's a public art collection along the river Emshel, so it's sculptures and stuff. And it emerged 2010 when the whole Ruhr area was the European capital of culture. And there was it is a cooperation between Urbane Kunste Ruhr, which is a cultural actor in the region, the Emshel Genossenschaft, which is the sewage and water management association, so the technical partner, and also the Regionalverband Ruhr, which is the planning agency, kind of regional planning agency. So it's not only a cultural actor involved, but it also has on board like all the other stakeholders, you can say. So it first emerged as a temporary exhibition for this 2010 European Capital of Culture, but in 2019 it was actually transformed into a permanent collection, and the idea of a collection is very key here because it really says like art being a public collection, so it's a collection of art that's there to stay. And what is also very crucial is, and you see that in background map, is this cycle path that again connects artworks, connects people to the Emshel, etc. So I just want to give you a few examples. So there's Henrik Håkansson's The Insect Society. This is this cubus here, installed at the spring of the river Emshir to look at kind of the ecological value of the river Emshir. Then we have from Tadashi Kawamata, walkway and tower. You see the tower here, so it's a tower that you access through a zigzag path, so it also opens different perspectives, and then you stand on the tower and you see the Emshir Valley, which again is recognizable as a valley. Then there's something that I find very beautiful, Das Park Hotel, the Park Hotel, by Andreas Strauss. So it's kind of a most uncommon overnight stay, so you can stay here overnight in sewage pipes and you pay what you want. Then there's Nevin Allardags Wellenbrecher, so I'm sure you're familiar with these kind of items from the coast. And there's by Tobias Rehberger, Slinky Springs to Fame, a bridge constructed over the river and the canal. So once again, like between the neighborhoods, you actually can cross sites. Then we also have a project that I like a lot, which is called, now we're at the restart of this device. Anyway, it's called Theater der Pflanzen, Theater of Plants, and it's an old sewage basin that's been transformed by Piet Udolf and Gross Max as a stage play for plants in a sewage basin. Then we have artist collective Inges Idee, who have brought up this sculpture of the electricity pole that can be seen from far away, and that reminds kind of the uncorrigible mind of what you probably know as Goethe's ballad of the sorcerer's apprentice. And then we have the landscape architecture office, Atelier Le Balto, who have what you see on top, on the left, I think. And it's a series of planks in a wild hazelnut plantation, or grown wild hazelnut plantation, again making space accessible. Just to highlight a few, this whole Emshir Kunstweg, Emshir Art Path continues to grow. It's being conceptualized and curated by Urbane Künste Ruhr, and yeah, as I say, it's best to cycle along. A very different project I want to go into briefly is the Lake Phoenix in Dortmund, and here you can see Phoenix, which is a former steel work with immense consume of space that was dismantled and brought to China. It's still operating in China, by the way. And you see here the comparison kind of before and after, and I like these photos because they really show you also what it meant to live next to it. And then the urban concept was to actually develop this area after the steelworks gone into a lake and a housing area. And yeah, you can see it here, and in the foreground along the lake you can see the river Emshir. So here the river Emshir kind of is also being kind of rediscovered as a quality. You have the lake on the side, you have a housing which is partly real estate, upmarket, partly social housing. The Emshir is part of the flood management system, but also like all over Dortmund and even from neighboring cities, people come here to spend their leisure time. I have a lot more to say for this project if this were another presentation, because of course you can also critique a lot about kind of the social changes that are happening, gentrification, etc. But also a completely derelict neighborhood has turned into something that people actually like to go again. So I want to highlight this here. This, just very briefly, lots of new urban concepts to actually connect neighborhoods that have been disconnected and that had no connection to nature. So you have to imagine like what's been cutting through is a huge canal Emsher, but also the highway, the railway tracks, the industries, and also the waterways for shipment. So here's a lot of kind of potential to actually reconnect. Another project that's more in the ecological and learning topic are the 6 blue classrooms along the river Emsher. So they are open air educational spaces for practical classes in nature to discover the flora and fauna that's coming back to the river. And they are regularly offered workshops for kids, for youth, but also a lot for teachers. And I also like that you see that on the pictures, so it's not only the kids engaging here, but it's also like older citizens coming back to the river. And I want to close with a project that I find very symbolic of this whole kind of Emsher renaturation, but then also the cultural engagement with people. And that is Waiting for the River. It's a temporary sculpture that was put into the riverbed, which was not yet, or is not yet a riverbed, but the future riverbed, by Observation Rotterdam, also for 2010 European Capital of Culture. And it's basically a space where you can also kind of stay for 24 hours and engage with the river. And what I like is really this idea of waiting for the river, because you don't know where the river is actually going to come, because it's going to be more or less natural again, so it will find its riverbed, and you can actually stay on these wooden bridges and kind of anticipate that one day the river is going to come. So it is this anticipatory landscape that for me is very symbolic of this whole reconnecting to the river. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Kirsten. I'll just give you present you. Това беше Кирстен, доктор по Urban Studies, или както успях да си го преведа, градски изследвания. Тя в момента, всъщност от февруари тази година, е директор в Гьоте-институт София. Thank you so much.